Hello there, listeners, and thank you for joining us on the CATCast, Chatham Area Transit's podcast where we focus on everything local transit and Chatham County. Today's episode will be hosted by CAT Executive Director and CEO, Faye DiMassimo. She will also be joined by two very special guests. Please welcome to the CATCast, President and CEO of Savannah Area Chamber of Commerce, Bert Brantley, and Joe Marinelli, President of Visit Savannah.
Hello, this is Faye DiMassimo. I'm the CEO of Chatham Area Transit. We are delighted to welcome you back to the newest version of CATCast, a podcast where we discuss all things transit in Savannah and Chatham County. And today we are delighted to be joined by both Joe Marinelli, who is the president of Visit Savannah, and our new president and CEO of the Savannah Area Chamber of Commerce, Bert Brantley. So thank you both so much for being here today. We're excited to have this conversation.
And we are delighted to be here.
Very good. All right. Well, we're going to jump right in.
Good. Let's do it.
Let's discuss our perspectives on the value of CAT in the city of Savannah and Chatham County, and what is quality public transit.
Yeah, well, Faye and I, of course, have worked together for a number of years in Atlanta before she moved down here. And since she moved, I thought I would follow down so we could continue to work together. My view on public transit is shaped by my many years of commuting into Atlanta, 20 plus years, where I drove solo. I rode the regional bus service as well at varying times, and then also worked with all those folks, our friends at MARTA and all the public transit agencies in the Metro Atlanta region. And so, for me, I think that public transit strives to be clean and safe, efficient, reliable, those kind of things. And if it can do that, it can serve not only our citizens who need transit to get to work or to the grocery store, to the doctor's office, but then also our visitors. As Joe's team continues to recruit new visitors to the city, whether they're going to a convention or just coming for leisure trips, they need to get around as well. And they're usually not here with a car. A lot of times they fly in or maybe ride in with other folks. They may not have a designated car with them. So if we can have a transit system that serves both of those groups of people and does it well, then we'll have a thriving economy here that is based on not only our manufacturing and our military that's here and all the different industries we have here, but also a really robust visitation economy as well.
One thing I would add to that before we move on to Joe is it's interesting. There were a couple of things you brought up. I know we'll likely talk about the ferries because CAT has a unique portfolio of services.
Absolutely.
We have buses, we have paratransit vehicles for our seniors and some of our differently abled residents in our community, but we also have the ferries, and the ferries certainly are a big part of those visitors that you spoke about. But you mentioned those folks like yourself who are making that commute trip into work. And I think one of the opportunities that we see for CAT in the future that's a part of being quality public transit is how we meet the needs of getting people to all of these jobs that are growing all around us. And especially, and we can never talk about without mentioning Hyundai in our neighboring Bryan County.
Right.
So I think the notion of having the kind of express bus commuter experience that you were able to enjoy, Bert, in Atlanta is something that we hope to bring here.
Yeah, and I saw that firsthand when we had companies start to consider what are the transit options when they were moving into Atlanta. And of course, the Amazon second headquarters is the most famous of those, but we saw it all the way back to State Farm when they were looking at the perimeter area as well, and actually making that as part of their consideration. And more companies are going to do that going forward. And so I think to the extent that we can offer a very diverse service that meets that need as well, getting people from a residential point to an employment point, and look, when I was doing that, I was happier because I could be on my phone. I was actually in graduate school at the time. I could study on the way, but you can't do that if you're in your car. You shouldn't be doing that if you're in your car. So I think that is a hallmark of a robust system that is serving all those different populations.
Absolutely. Joe?
Well, I think as we think about visitors, and as you know, Faye, the Savannah Chatham area has attracted millions of visitors over the years. In fact, I think last year we were up over 14 million visitors. So, Bert talked a little bit about it, but our visitors are getting younger. We see that in all of our business intelligence. And as the visitors get younger, and especially in this post-pandemic world, they're looking for different ways to get around. We promote Savannah as a very walkable city. We want people to come in and park their cars and walk. and take transit to get around. And so I think as our visitors get younger, they're looking for more of that. So that's one. Secondly, sustainability is important, right? Everything we do is built around sustainability, and we're always looking for new ways and more ways to improve that carbon footprint here in town. And so again, if we can encourage our visitors to get out of their cars and walk or take transit or take the ferries, as we'll talk about shortly, that's a good thing. And then finally, Savannah is a very welcoming city, and welcoming means a lot of things to a lot of people, but inclusiveness is important. And you talked about people with disabilities, and Savannah is a city that takes that seriously. And so having the type of equipment and transportation that welcome those folks is as important in terms of being inclusive as anything else we do.
Couple of things that I think sort of, again, following on to what you said that you probably are aware of. I know everyone's aware of our electric buses. They're quite fabulous. And I think a lot of people have ridden them in the business community and residents and visitors. And they really are just such a nice addition to our fleet. In addition to that, though, in April, we'll be adding 10 new electric paratransit vehicles, which also are a similar vehicle to what microtransit can be. So hopefully we'll talk about microtransit a little bit today and what that can mean for us. But we'll be adding electric to our paratransit vehicles, and of course, our two newest additions to the ferry fleet will be hybrids. So we are very conscious of being in a coastal area and in a community that values that fundamentally, and making sure that we reflect that in how we do our business.
No question. Folks that live here feel like sustainability should be a priority for us. And it is, right? At the city level, at the county level, with CAT, and how we attract visitors, how we attract future businesses. So it's right there at the top.
Absolutely. So what do you think is the greatest challenge facing the city of Savannah and Chatham and our region where CAT can be a part of the solutions, a tool in the toolkit, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's the growth that's coming, right? I mean, you see the expansion of the convention center across the river, which of course we're incredibly excited about, but that's going to draw more folks into town. You've got incredible expansion in the Georgia Ports Authority. They're going to continue to grow. And I saw a stat the other day that 1 out of every 8.8 containers in the country is coming through Savannah now. So they've increased their market share dramatically. And that's only going to continue. We're one of the few ports that have capacity expansion capability. A lot of places are landlocked and can't do that. And then, of course, the manufacturing growth that we're seeing out on the west side of the county and then our neighboring counties as well. And so, how do you handle all that growth, and what kind of transportation options do we have for them? And so I think the things we talked about, giving people a choice. And that was always, as a commuter, that's all I wanted, was if I just had some options. Some days it made total sense for me to jump on the bus and ride in because I had a very set schedule that day and coming back. But there were other days where I was going to be running around. I needed my car. And so if you give people options, they will absolutely take them if the options work. And so I think CAT can absolutely help as the companies to figure out where their employees are coming from, how they're going to get there. And then we can provide that service level, I think, as a community to help our folks, whether it's, again, our military community, or whether people are going to work every day. Is there an option for them to not drive by themselves every day and be in their car? Some days that's going to be what's needed because of other factors. But for the shift worker, for the very stable work schedule that somebody might have, that could be an option that they could help. So this growth is coming. I mean, we know we can see it coming loud and clear down the tracks. And so whether it's water, sewer, or whether it's transportation, that infrastructure is absolutely going to be necessary to help us keep up. And I think CAT will play a very critical role in helping us to make sure we grow in a responsible way.
I think another thing that's important about the growth, and it's to the point that you were making about, and to the point you were making about, our visitors are younger. Our residential growth is going to come along with all of that economic growth and the job growth and so forth. And so I do think that one of the things that CAT has got to be responsive to, and I also think it's a part of every transit system, is transit changed after COVID. transit was changing a bit before COVID because Uber and Lyft and those kinds of services changed the sort of landscape. And I think now the notion that if you think a transit system is a fixed route system with accompanying paratransit and that's sort of it, and maybe you have a unique thing like ferries, but nonetheless, that's sort of the stable of what you do. I think we're missing the boat. I think we've got to be market responsive too. And we've got to think about all of that dynamic workforce, residential growth, all that is occurring. And to your point, I think that is the key in this market, is that everybody wants choices. Not just choices of maybe I drive my car or maybe I take the bus. Well, what kind of transit service do I take? Maybe I'd rather do an on-demand transit service within a particular zone, microtransit. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm on the fixed route and I'm just trying to get point A to point B and that works really well. I'm trying to get to a job over here. If CAT's offering something that's an express commuter, now that works for me too. And if I'm just going across the river, I'll catch the ferry. Mm-hmm. And now I'm someone who's differently abled or a senior and I need that paratransit experience. So I think the notion of us thinking about beyond what has been the traditional business lines of transit and saying, let's imagine what we need to be and invest in those things in appropriate measures to build a system that really does work for everyone. So.
Yeah, no question. Bringing it back to visitors for a minute, they spend billions of dollars in our community every day. So we think about us as locals and residents, but the impact of visitor spending in our community is huge. So adding on to the growth, I think connectivity is a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. Connectivity to Hutchinson Island, whether that's rubber tiger service or ferry service, connectivity to the airport, connectivity to improved retail and shopping experiences, even Tybee Island at some point. So, our visitors want to be able to connect to those key things, whether they're here for a convention, whether they're leisure travelers, or, one of the new trends right now is what our industry is calling bleisure, which is business leisure travel, right? They're coming in for business, but then they're going to extend their stay for leisure. The leisure part comes out of their pocket. The business part comes out of their company's pocket. So, that connectivity, I think, is part of the growth that you're talking about.
Yeah, a great example of that. We had the Top One Out ceremony at the convention center last week. We're excited about that. Structure's up, and they're going to start, filling it in now. And so there was the logistics summit was over there at the same time, which had 800 people over there. So we talked about with all the construction, parking is limited, and so we had the opportunity. I did to talk to you on the phone. Matter of fact, when I was on the ferry and riding over, and it was right on time. I knew exactly when it was going to be there. I was there, rode it over, and then left right on time as well. And was able to plan my afternoon around, times that the ferry was coming. And it gave me a chance to not have a difficulty parking, getting over there, all those kind of things. And so ultimately, it's the choice. If you have the choice to take that option, it is so helpful and so beneficial to someone like me who was just trying to get over there I actually had a number of things to do over there the other day. We had a convention center board meeting, the topping out, and then I was on a panel that afternoon. And so it was incredibly convenient for me to use that day. And end up being a reliable trip as well, which is really what we're looking for. So that's the kind of options I think we can provide to people, and it's kind of fun riding across the river too, particularly for visitors who don't do it a lot, and that's part of the experience of being here as well, and being out there with that beautiful bridge behind you, and it's part of what we're offering here to not only visitors but also residents as well.
Well, we're an experience.
Yeah,
that's
right.
for sure. Yeah. One of my favorite stories, you were talking about going back and forth, and you were taking a business trip over. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite stories is we had gone to a meeting over at the Westin, and the service person who was helping with the meeting room that we were in was explaining to me, she saw my badge that I had on, and she said, "Oh, you're with CAT?" And I said, "Absolutely." And she said, "Well, I take the bus," and she explained to me which bus trip she takes from home every morning. And then she said, "And then I catch the ferry over here for my job." And I was like, "Oh, look at that."
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what are the greatest challenges? We talked about sort of what are our greatest challenges. We got workforce, we've got growth, we've got this really all opportunities. But what do you think are the greatest challenges and opportunities for CAT over the next 5 years? And how can CAT be a better partner to the business community?
Yeah, I'm not telling you anything you don't know here, but I think with all the growth that's coming, I think the financial part of infrastructure is really going to continue to be a challenge for us and as a region, as a community. How do we equitably and sustainably pay for the investments that are going to be needed in these, again, whether it's water, sewer, or whether it's transportation or any of these public utilities, public services that are provided to our citizens. And so we're all working on that. Obviously, there's a mix of federal and state and local. All those partners are all together, and we'll continue to work on that together, certainly. But I think for us, for the business community, if CAT can be financially stable, financially secure, a good investment, essentially, it's very easy for us to go to our leadership, our business community, and say, this is worth our time. This is worth our effort. This is a beneficial service to the community, and the return on it is there in terms of not only visitation, but also on the visit side, on the employment side, and then also on the social service side as well. And so ultimately, that's the biggest value you can provide, is just doing a really good job, because that will be what leads to greater support, greater interest, greater investment, I think, from our community at large. And you're on the way already. You're doing that. And I think that continued mindset and that continued proof point that we can show out to our leadership is certainly the number one thing you can do from my perspective.
Yeah. I really want to pick up on leadership. That's where I think CAT has the greatest opportunity. And Faye, I give you a lot of credit in the short time that you've been here, how you've just stepped up. I mean, you've jumped into every hot frying pan that has been presented to you. But look, talk about all this growth that's happening, whether it's the business side, the population growth, the visitation growth. We all have to be facing the same direction in the parade, right? And I think we have that in this community to a great degree: city leadership, county leadership, business leadership, tourism leadership. And I think it's important for CAT to be recognized and at this table, as part of that leadership of where we are all going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's about trust. That's about confidence. And that's
you have to earn those.
And that's right. And that's not always been the case, right? So having the community feel good about who's leading CAT, where CAT's going, what their initiatives are, being engaged, I think, is part of that. So it's all about the leadership that.
Yeah, look, I think all three of us, given our experiences, can easily say that the staff, they're the make or break, right? They're the ones who are doing the work out there. And it really is up to us to be able just to deliver the message about what they're doing, what the successes are, what the challenges are. And so, it's all of us have great teams. All of us have people that are really committed and dedicated to their jobs. And what it really is being their voice and making sure that whether it's elected leaders or whether it's business leaders, that we're all in the conversations together, to Joe's point, and that we're reflecting back the work that's going on, the day-to-day work that's actually out there and serving the public. And so that's the great honor that we have to be able to do that, and so that they can focus on their jobs, don't have to worry about going to the city council meeting or the county commission meeting. We absolutely can do that on their behalf. But I have witnessed and experienced the great service that the CAT staff provides, and then just reflecting that back out to the leadership here in our community, I think, is such a big part for us all to play as we go forward.
Well, I think the CAT staff and our professional operators are just the best. We all know that we have aspirations of being even better. We also understand the importance, I think, of running as a business. But I think one of the greatest things that we're working on now that is useful to you is this notion that that sort of proof of ourselves and what we're about and what are we trying to accomplish. And the master transit plan that's currently underway that you will hopefully see come out this summer, we're well on our way to really crafting a vision for transit services and so forth for this area and regionally that I think is powerful. It's a business proposition, and it's a proposition that everybody can go, yeah, that's it, and we can all be a part of that. So, but I think giving you on the business community side and giving our other public sector partners, the cities, Chatham County, and so forth, giving you that vision, a clear vision that not only says this is what we want to do, but this is how we're going to do it. Yeah. And that's what you're going to see in this document in a way that I think brings clarity to it, and it helps give everybody something to go, to build around.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the game changer.
And we do that same thing, right? I mean, we have a business plan. Visit Savannah has their marketing plan for the year. I mean, I think, laying out a very clear vision, it also helps the staff too, because when they make a decision, they can match it up to that plan and know, is this something that aligns or not? And so planning the work and then working the plan. I mean, I think that's certainly what we do every year. And it would, look forward to supporting that when you guys are ready to release that and dig in to see how we can help, provide any feedback and input to that too.
Well, you'll have a chance. We a little bit later, so we're now sort of the analysis and that part of the work is a lot of initial community engagement has been done, but now we're going to be moving into a lot of more of the focus groups, the targeted engagement, and we're going to host an open house for all elected officials in Chatham County and all business leadership.
Right. Sure.
So there'll be an opportunity for you to come and see and touch and feel and ask questions and offer input and draw maps and all that kind of good stuff that will ultimately land in this plan. But the part that always I get the most excited about is visions are great. I'm a planner, so visions are great, but I've always been kind of a weird planner, I think, because I like the doing of it. I like the building it. I like the implementation, and the implementation strategies in this are strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we've put some real innovation into what we're thinking and how we're thinking about getting things done.
Yeah,
So
that's exciting.
Infrastructure funding. We mentioned that earlier. Including transit is key to successfully meeting the opportunities and growth that we've talked about. What are your thoughts on reliably funding infrastructure, including transit, but just reliably funding infrastructure? I've never, rarely been to a community that had sort of all the tools in their toolkit. How do we decide about the tools in our toolkit to get us to the places that of accomplishment that we need?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really unique community because of the visitation numbers here. You can find very few. I mean, there's a few around the country that are so heavily reliant on visitor spending. The economy really that undergirds really everything our economy does, but also contributes sales taxes and to the coffers as well. And so, what the right mix is between what's on the sales tax side, and then of course we have property taxes, and we tax everything these days one way or the other. We were just talking about the Uber a rideshare fee the other day, which is a fairly new tax that the state's charging. But what the right mix is, I mean, of course there are elected leaders that figure all those things out, and we're very open to providing input and feedback on that. But ultimately, it needs to be reliable, and I think we've seen certainly over our years of working together. That the gas tax has become less and less reliable at the state level because so many people are using more fuel efficient, and then sometimes no fuel at all. And so the state is going to have to reckon with that over these next few years as people go more towards electrification and even more towards hybrid, so that they're using less fuel. And so this is a conversation we're all going to have together, both at the local level and then at the state level as well. But ultimately, I think we've got to be very clear about what we're going to do with any money that we collect from both our visitors and our residents as well, how we're going to spend it and spend it on projects that they support. We got to make sure that we're accountable to the people when they vote for something. We need to build, what we say that they're going to vote for. And so we're going to be heavily involved in those conversations, already are, and will continue to be, and just really to be the business community's voice and making sure that we get a chance to give our input and feedback. But it's not an easy problem. Everybody's dealing with it. Everybody's really across the country, and a lot of conversations, certainly at the state level, and then a lot of conversations locally as well. And so I don't know there's a perfect answer, but we really have to get to some kind of sustainable, reliable funding mechanism to where you can plan and then build a plan. Because if you have a plan that you can't afford, it doesn't do very good, and people get frustrated with that. People get frustrated when they can't
One thing that's an interesting tool for us, and our board has actually already taken an action on it, and you may have followed this. Is I know we had a T-SPLOS that was considered here. It didn't pass, but I believe that there will be future conversations around that. So we went ahead and really started thinking about what would our offering look like into that mix of proposal. For the community to consider. And of course, Athens, north of here, has done a remarkable job of taking their T-SPLOS, and especially in transit, because it is unusually in SPLOST world eligible for operations funding too, which is always something Transit's trying to struggle with. We get lots of money for capital because everybody loves to cut ribbons on stuff, but that operation stuff, that's just the everyday stuff. So I think that that's going to be an important conversation. Our board has already adopted a draft of what our T-SPLOST would look like. It includes both operations and capital. But I think one of the things that's going to be key to that, and as I was listening to sort of community conversations, communications in our neighborhood and our neighborhood groups, and then just people that we would encounter through business and so forth. And Bert, this goes back to things that we've seen in Atlanta too, is, people go T-SPLOST, E-SPLOST, this SPLOST, that, and they're like, explain it all to me. Yeah. And it almost like I kept wanting to say, I wish that there was something that a flyer that came out in the utility bills or came out electronically with the utility bills that sort of was like just a bar chart that said, this is what E-SPLOST is and what it does and how it's calculated. This is what T-SPLOST does and this is how it's calculated. Each of those sort of portfolios of things lost and so forth. So you sort of just lay it all out side by side so people can try to understand, because otherwise I think folks, their first reaction is just to say, you're just taxing me. I have no idea how does this all fit together? Sure. So if we can have some simplified, almost like a postcard explanation that just kind of gives a little bit to each one. And then if somebody wants to dig more into details, but at least makes it clear what are these distinctiveness and the calculations of each and so forth. I think that would be a phenomenal tool.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you ask the question, is it figure-outable, right? Is it figure-outable? And it probably is, but it's not easy. It's complex, as you just pointed out. One of the things you've done very well since you've been here is talk about best practices. And so we are a very unique community, as Bert said, but these transit challenges are not unique anywhere to anywhere else, right? So who does it well? How do they do it well? And then how can we learn from that? So I think that's all part of the conversation.
I think microtransit. So one of two of the things that are sort of like in some of the best practices, or some of the, at least let's call it cutting edge activity in transit across the country right now, is in this notion of microtransit and zero fare. Now, we're interesting from the perspective that we've had zero fare here for a long time in elements of our system. And I think one of the things you're going to see in our master transit plan is we're actually not going to deviate too far from that. Some systems are experimenting in whole with zero fare, and other systems are saying, no, don't believe in zero fare at all. And I'm like, what, it's worked for us. Especially with the DOT service. It's worked for us with the expansion that we did into the West Side neighborhoods earlier this year. It's working for us with the ferry system. So are there some targeted opportunities? Is there a good sort of business proposition in some key areas where zero fare would be a really good and complementary, strong, strength building part of our system? Where are those and what do they look like? And then how do we absorb the financial piece of that? CAT's fare box collection is fairly low in comparison to the overall cost. So that notion of some incremental measure of fare that you give up for a particular area wouldn't be hugely impactful. It's something you could figure out how to work with. Yeah. So those are the kinds of things our board will be considering. But then microtransit, as a best practice. Now, that is something that is being experimented with in a very wholesale way in lots of places because it's working. And why is it working? Well, it's like, I hate to compare it this way, but it's like the Uber Lyft of transit. All of a sudden you've created a zone. You are providing it in a more accessible vehicle. That is, it's not a big bus rolling through the neighborhood. It's more of a smaller vehicle, more customized sort of experience. And you're calling it when you need it to go where you need to, when you need to, how you need to. And so I think that notion of having that element to get people, whether it's to their job, or whether it is to the grocery store, as you mentioned earlier, or medical appointment, I think that's important. And then I think that there's also sort of an equity component of that. I was reading a story this past week that got me really excited of a partnership that exists in 29 cities in the country right now, 2 of which are in Georgia, Columbus and Atlanta. This one is particularly with Uber and Lyft, but it's where Goodwill and the United Way are working with those industries to provide that customized on-demand trip to an interview. And then if you get the job, the first 3 weeks of getting you to and from the job. And so we're reaching out to explore that idea for public transit here. If it can work in that, it can work with us too, especially if we have the micro transit vehicles. And remember, those are the same type vehicles and size vehicles that we have for paratransit. They're more of that customized van, a little bit, sort of 15 passenger bus sort of an approach. So, and we've already got those on order, so we could get into that business fairly quickly. So I think that's exciting for us, and it's a place where we can, make a real difference.
Yeah, and I think the uniqueness of this city, the historic district, the historic nature of the city, it's hard to build things with a lot of parking down here, right? And so, and if you do it, it's very expensive. And so I think when we look at working with people who are developing some of this new product down here and thinking about how we can maybe even reduce costs for them. They don't have to build a bunch of parking spaces. We can help them save money by making sure they've got that kind of ability for their guests or their residents or whatever kind of whatever development they're building. I think we got to be creative and understand those best practices as you talked about, but also then apply those to the very uniqueness of this city. That is what we all love, is why we're here. And we just have to be open to that and willing to try things and see if we can make them work and find a unique solution that will maybe based on what's happening in other places, but is very directed and specific to our mix here.
Absolutely.
Cutting edge, Bert, not best practice.
Yeah.
Cutting edge.
Okay. Yeah.
So what are some final thoughts? What are last thoughts that you have?
Well, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see how this partnership continues to go forward and how we continue to work together. It is an incredibly exciting time, but all of those things create challenges of the future, opportunities of the future. And so we have to be thinking about those. We have to be working on them. We can't wait until the problem is here. We got to be forward thinking about that and be, I think Joe said it perfectly early, like collaborative leadership, collaborative style that I think will work well if we're all committed to doing that. And I can tell you certainly from the chamber, from our board, and from our executive committee leadership, we're all totally on board, and we all see the vision, we all see the future, but it's going to be a challenge, to get there. And the best way to get there is all, Joe said, facing the same way in the parade, which we'll see on Friday. Hopefully, everybody is going in the same direction, right? It's such a great visual as we think about what's going to happen here at St. Patrick's Day. But could not be more excited. We are very ready at the chamber to be part of the conversation and to be very supportive of the investments and the new direction, new opportunities that CAT and the whole community is going to have going forward. And so we're ready to roll our sleeves up and get to work.
Well, communities are a team sport.
Yeah.
I've never, I know that you all have had the same experiences. I don't know that there's ever been anything in my career that I've worked on where it was accomplished alone.
Sure.
We've all done things as parts of teams and in partnerships and collaborations, and that's everything. And that's actually the fun of it. Yeah. This kind of being in a community that's growing like this one, with all of the incredible problem solving and challenge and opportunity that's all around it. I mean, could we be in a better place right now?
There's really a lot of smart people too. We have attracted, this area has attracted a lot of talent, both in the public sector as well as the private sector. And then there's a lot of folks that have been here and doing their thing here and are really smart and talented as well. And so it's a great mix of the kind of established business leaders and public sector leaders, and then a mix of folks that just are attracted to come down. And so I think we got a really great opportunity to do great things.
I don't want this to be wasted. This is this podcast idea, right? The fact that you've chosen this media, this forum, to communicate with leaders, communicate that to the community, to share what's happening, right? This is what it's all about today, right? This is where we are. And so I my hat's off to you and the CAT leadership to even do something like this, right? To find new ways to reach out to your audiences. And you have many audiences. You have elected officials, business leaders, you have your ridership, you have the people at the state that are paying attention, the feds, whatever. This is terrific. And my hat's off to you for for really doing some groundbreaking, cutting edge work here that frankly we're not seeing a lot of yet, and you're at the front edge of that. So my compliments.
And look, the folks at home who are listening, they can catch a cat, right? They can. And give feedback and let us know. Let you know, not me. Well, they can let me know, and I'll let you know. But tell us, tell you what they like, what they don't. Let's get great feedback back so we can continue to work together and provide that service. And so, completely agree with Joe. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, but also talk to those folks who are out there listening and making sure that we're being responsive to their needs and their ideas, and make sure we're doing everything we can to make this the best city it can be.
Well, it's been a great venue to have community conversations, and bringing in lots of different voices and perspectives is really important too. Like I said, collaboration, partnerships is key to building, and we're all building right now. So it has been an honor to have you both with us today. I thank you so very, very much.
How about this coffee? Huh? That's great stuff.
You got a mug to take home. It needs to go prominently on your desk now. I'm going to be looking for it next time I'm over there. So thank you all so much for joining us today. As you heard earlier, if you have comments or questions, we welcome them. We look forward to continuing to see you out and about, and please catch a cat.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And that concludes today's CATCast. A massive thank you to Bert Brantley and Joe Marinelli for joining us. What an informative and enlightening conversation. And finally, thank you to the listener for tuning in. There will be more exciting episodes to come. Until then, take care and catch a cat.